friends, for your story today. We have been talking about things that we see in the sky, and that's a little bit to do with something that has to do with science. So, we're going to start talking about science. So, our question for the next 4 or 5 days is this question. It says, what kinds of things, whoops, Mrs. Hoffman scratched out one of the letters. Let's see if I can find the marker. What kinds of things do scientists do? So we're going to talk about and learn about the things that scientists do. So we're going to pretend like we are scientists. It's going to be really fun. We'll do lots of fun activities. So we're going to read a story today about a girl, and she's thinking and learning about something. So when we talk about scientists learn about the world by asking questions, and then they have ideas that they need to test and see if their question is answered. And if their question wasn't answered, then they have to learn more and test their ideas. So you're going to listen to a girl who discovers a whale in her backyard. And like a scientist, she has lots of questions. And we're going to learn about scientists and what they do to discover and learn about things. So this is our story. It's a fun story. It's called Dear Mr. Blueberry. And this is a fantasy story. So remember, a fantasy story means that this story couldn't really happen. It's a fantasy. It couldn't really happen. But the girl is trying to discover and learn about something. So I want you to think about, remember we talk about words in our story that we might need to know. So the first word we might need to know about is information. Information means that you have facts about something. So we're going to listen for information in our story. The next word is perhaps. When I say perhaps, it's another way of saying maybe. I could say perhaps it's going to snow today. That means it might snow. The next word is pleased. If we're pleased about something, we are happy. So I want you to listen for pleased in our story. The next word is pond. When we hear the word pond, I want you to remember that a pond is a small body of water. It's not like our East Lake Lake. It's much smaller. The next word is spurt. So if something spurts, it's usually a liquid and it pours out quickly. Sometimes when you put a straw into a drink and your drink comes up out of the straw, it spurts out of the straw. The next word is travel. When we use the word travel, we're saying we're moving from one place to another. So I could travel from my house to the school. I'm saying that I'm moving from my house and I'm going to another place. So let's look at our words. I'll say the word, then you say the word. Information, perhaps, pleased, pond, spurt, and travel. I want you to touch your nose when you hear those words in our story. So let's see if Mrs. Hoffman can get this right today. This is called Dear Mr. Blueberry. It is written and illustrated by the same person, Simon James. So in the story, the girl finds a whale in her backyard. So let's see what happens to the girl. Dear Mr. Blueberry. And here's the title page. Now, another thing I need to tell you about this story. It is written like letters. So instead of seeing words at the bottom of the page, every page is a letter. Sometimes the letter is from the girl, and the girl's name is Emily. and she writes to her teacher, and her teacher's name is Mr. Blueberry. So she writes letters to her teacher telling her teacher what happened, and then her teacher writes a letter back to her. So when we write a letter, we always say dear, and we write to the person's name who we're writing to. Then we write the things that we would like to say, and then a lot of times you will say love at the end, and then you will sign your name. So Emily is writing to Mr. Blueberry. So I'm going to show you the picture first. And look what Emily, she sees something in her yard. So let's look and see. What does she see in her yard? She has a swimming pool. It's really small. And what does she see in her swimming pool? So let's see what her letter says. Dear Mr. Blueberry, I love whales very much, and I think I saw one in my pond today. Please send me some information on whales, as I think he might be hurt. Love, Emily. Here's Emily. She's looking out her bedroom window, and she sees a whale. So, do you think Mr. Blueberry is going to write a letter back to her? And what do you think he's going to say? Do you think that a whale could be in a swimming pool? Let's see what Mr. Blueberry says. Dear Emily, here are some details about whales. I don't think you'll find it was a whale you saw, because whales don't live in ponds. Did you hear our word? But in salt water. Yours sincerely, your teacher, Mr. Blueberry. So Mr. Blueberry signed his name. And this is Emily reading Mr. Blueberry's letter. Do you see her little brother or sister? They're dumping out the cereal. So Emily got the letter. Do you think she's going to agree with Mr. Blueberry that whales can't live in her backyard? Let's see. Now she's going to write a letter back to Mr. Blueberry. And this is what she says. Dear Mr. Blueberry, I am now putting salt into the pond every day before breakfast, and last night I saw my whale smile. I think he is feeling better. Do you think he might be lost? Why did Emily put salt in her swimming pool? Did Mr. Blueberry tell her something? Let's look back at his letter. He said, whales don't live in ponds, but they live in salt water. So why did Emily put salt in her swimming pool? She was trying to make it so her whale would be feeling better with salt. So here's Emily, and she's putting salt into her swimming pool. Is the whale in the swimming pool? Let's see. So let's see what Mr. Blueberry says when he comes back. He's writing a letter, and he said, Dear Emily, please don't put any more salt in the pond. I'm sure your parents won't be pleased. There's our word. The parents won't be pleased. Oh, Mrs. Hoffman's got to go help her cat. Just a minute. Sorry. Okay, let's try that page again. Please don't put any more salt in your pond. I'm sure your parents won't be pleased. I'm afraid there can't be a whale in your pond because whales don't get lost. They always know where they are in the oceans. Yours sincerely, Mr. Blueberry. So, what did Mr. Blueberry tell her? There can't be a whale in her pond because whales always know where they are. So here's Emily, and she's reading the letter. Do you think that letter makes her very happy? Let's see. What is Emily going to say back to Mr. Blueberry? She says, Dear Mr. Blueberry, Tonight I'm very happy because I saw my whale jump up and spurt lots of water. He looked blue. Does this mean he might be a blue whale? Love, Emily. P.S. Sometimes when you forget to write something in a letter, you put P.S. And she says, what can I feed him with? Here's Emily. She saw her whale spurting some water. Let's see what Mr. Blueberry's going to say. Do you think he's going to try and tell Emily that it can't be a whale in her swimming pool? Let's see. Dear Emily, blue whales are blue, and they eat tiny shrimp-like creatures that live in the sea. However, I must tell you that a blue whale is much too big to live in your pond. Yours sincerely, Mr. Blueberry. P.S. Perhaps, is it a blue goldfish? Does he believe Emily? Does he think that she has a whale in her pond? Here's Emily. She's looking up in a book. Do you think she's trying to learn about whales? Scientists always try to learn more. If they don't know something, they look and look for more information and try to learn more. So Emily's trying to be like a scientist. She's trying to learn more about whales. Emily wrote back to Mr. Blueberry. Dear Mr. Blueberry, last night I read your letter to my whale. Afterward, he let me stroke his head. That means she was petting his head. It was very exciting. I secretly took some crunched up cornflakes and breadcrumbs. This morning I looked in the pond and they were all gone. I think I shall call him Arthur. What do you think? Love, Emily. So did Emily feed him fish? Nope, she fed him crackers. Could she really have a whale in her pond? Dear Emily, said Mr. Blueberry, I must point out to you quite forcibly now that in no way could a whale live in your pond. You may not know that whales are migratory, which means they travel, there's one of our words, they travel great distances each day. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Yours sincerely, Mr. Blueberry. She's reading his letter. Now, Mrs. Hoffman said it was a swimming pool at the beginning of the story. It's not, it's a pond. And she's by her pond. Silly Mrs. Hoffman. Emily wrote to Mr. Blueberry. Tonight I am a little sad. Arthur has gone. I think your letter made sense to him, and he's decided to be migratory again. Love, Emily. What happened to her whale? Is he there? Looks like she's finished her letter to Mr. Blueberry. What do you think he's going to say back to her? Dear Emily, please don't be too sad. It really was impossible for a whale to live in your pond. Perhaps when you are older you would like to sail the oceans, studying and protecting whales. Yours sincerely, Mr. Blueberry. Does Emily look like she's feeling sad? But he gave her an idea. Since her whale was gone, what could she do when she gets bigger? She could be a scientist. Now, she's writing a letter again to Mr. Blueberry. Dear Mr. Blueberry, it has been the happiest day. I went to the beach, and you'll never guess, but I saw Arthur. I called to him, and he smiled, and I knew it was Arthur because he made me stroke his head, and I gave him some of my sandwich. There's Emily on the beach with Arthur, and she gave him some of her sandwich. And what do you think, Mr.? She's going to finish her. This is the rest of her letter. And then we said goodbye. I shouted that I loved him very much, and I hope you don't mind, but I said you loved him too. And she signs her name. Love, Emily and Arthur. She's waving goodbye to Arthur. The end. So, Emily thought she saw a whale in her pond. Could a whale be in her pond? No. But she was being like a scientist is. She had some questions, she had some ideas, and she was trying to learn more about whales. So, that's what we're going to start doing. We're going to be acting like scientists, and we're going to ask questions, and we're going to get ideas and test our ideas and see if we can learn like scientists do. That was a long story today. Thanks for listening.